Chucky Hepburn.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this special Sunday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. On Saturday evening at the KFC Yum Center, Chucky Hepburn had a performance for the ages. He went absolutely off in the Cardinals' 79-68 victory over the Pittsburgh Panthers. It was a season sweep for the Cardinals against their old Big East rival. 7th straight victory for Pat Kelsey's team, and just a fantastic 37-point performance for Chucky Hepburn. And for Louisville fans, even though 37 points is incredible, it wasn't so much that he got there, it was how he got there, and more on that coming up soon. Terence Edwards was great in this game. The Cardinals' offense was up and down. Actually, the whole team was just up and down in terms of performance. Not the prettiest game. There were some defensive issues. We'll break this game down in its entirety throughout the duration of this episode. And usually I'm okay with waiting till Monday to recap games, but when there is a historic performance, I try to speed up the process and have an episode sooner. As you know, if you have tuned into the show for the past couple of years, the first couple months of each year, my sinuses just put up absolute Michael Jordan numbers, and combine that with cheering hard for the team. I really didn't have much of a voice on Saturday night after the game, so I was like, I can't really have an episode right now. I've got to wait till Sunday. So better late than never, but wanted to get on here and have an episode before Monday because Chucky Hepburn was incredible. He went off against the Pittsburgh Panthers. Not only was it a career performance for Chucky, it was the best performance by a Cardinal in the KFC Yum Center. And I don't think it's far-fetched to suggest that it was one of the best performances in program history. Chucky Hepburn scored a career-high 37 points on 9 of 11 shooting from the field, 6 of 6 from three-point land, 13 of 17 from the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals to go along with the wild scoring numbers. It is the most that a Louisville Cardinal has ever scored in the KFC Yum Center. Key thing here, in the KFC Yum Center, not the most that has been scored by a Cardinal ever, but the most in the KFC Yum Center, surpassing Jordan Nwora, who had 2 32-point performances, and Javon Hadley, who had a 32-point performance against Clemson this season. And like I mentioned, getting to 37 points is, of course, notable, but it was how he got there. Let's look at some of the timestamps. I'm going to read you a sequence with the timestamps. 5 minutes and 11 seconds left in the first half. Chucky Hepburn made three-pointer. 4:21 left in the first half. Chucky Hepburn made three-pointer. 3 minutes and 49 seconds left in the first half. Chucky Hepburn made three-pointer. 3:14 left. Chucky Hepburn made three-pointer. 1:36 left. Chucky Hepburn made three-pointer. 1:05 left. Chucky Hepburn made three-pointer. One of the wildest heat check moments that I've seen from a Louisville Cardinal, well, really since Rain Smith back against SMU when he hit 6 threes in a half against the Mustangs. But Hepburn shot 6 3-pointers, made them all, and with him being as unselfish as he is, didn't take another one for the rest of the game. Now, a lot of that is because Pittsburgh just completely eliminated that possibility with the way that they were guarding him in the second half. But it's not like these shots were wide open for Chucky either. Like, he hit a couple. The one in the corner, which was like a catch and shoot. He hit the sidestep three in the other corner to give him 2 straight. And then he hit another one. I'm like, okay, he's on fire. And then with each attempt after that, it seemed like the difficulty just kept increasing to the point where at the very end, when he tossed the ball to James Scott up at the top of the key and Scott tossed it over to the left and Hepburn got in, you could tell he was going to shoot. I mean, it was one of those, heat check moments. Well, the help defender went over it. The primary defender went up to guard the shot. Hepburn really didn't get a chance to set his feet and just threw it up and nailed the shot. And the pop that you could hear in the KFC Yum Center was absolutely incredible. And shout out to the fans for being able to pull off the stripe out game. It was really well executed. And it was the largest crowd of the season. Over 18,000 people came to the KFC Yum Center on Saturday. So shout out to the fans. Really nice, atmosphere for the Cardinals as we get closer and closer to the end of the regular season. Hepburn's performance continues to prove to me that he has to be a first-team All-ACC selection. Like, if he's not, it completely voids the list, in my opinion. And I know that biases are a thing. You just can't really look at what Hepburn is doing and tell me that there are a couple better players that are going to get over Chucky Hepburn on that list. And honestly, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, first-team All-American, anyone? I mean, I'm going to read you some stuff here in a second, and we're getting closer and closer to that. But like I said, this was a career high in scoring for Hepburn. He's had 5 games over 25 points this season, most notably that 32-point performance against West Virginia down in the Bahamas. And he topped that. 37 against Pittsburgh on Saturday, and Louisville needed him to get there because it was a really close game. The Cardinals were trailing with under 6 minutes to go in this contest. More on that here soon. He now ranks at number 7 or tied for 7th in the most points scored in a game in program history. And since 1968, there have only been 4 players to score at least 37 in a game. Russ Smith, Reese Gaines, Jordan Nwora, and Chucky Hepburn. So really, really solid performance from him. He's continuing to just show how he's having one of the best seasons in program history. And I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, and I don't want to be too nostalgic when we talk about players throughout the duration of Louisville's history. But what he's been able to do with his usage, it's wild. Per at the best wager on Twitter, the power 5 point guards with a usage rate of 25% or higher by offensive rating, Chucky Hepburn is second, 119.3. That is trailing Cam Jones from Marquette by less than 1 whole point. What he's been able to do this year, not only as a scorer, but as a lead ball handler, as a facilitator, as a leader, and as a point of attack defender. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Hepburn is now number 8 in the single season assist list with 167. Looking at the list, I think that he has a chance to get into the top 4, like T. Will had 185 in 2009. You think with 2 regular season games left, with the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament, it is pretty reasonable that he could get there. Now, Peyton Sieve is number 3 with 211. I'm not sure that he's going to be able to get to that number, but if he gets into the top 5, it's going to be pretty significant. But it just kind of makes me chuckle because I remember seeing a list just recently ranking the top 10 most impactful transfers. And guess who wasn't on that list? I just don't know how you couldn't put Chucky Hepburn on there. I don't know how you couldn't put him in the top 5. And I also think it's kind of funny that he didn't get put on the Bob Cousy Award watch list for the nation's best point guard. Like, you look at the list: Mark Sears from Alabama, Walter Clayton from Florida, Ryan Nimhard from Gonzaga, Keyshawn Gilbert from Iowa State, Cam Jones from Marquette, Penn State's Ace Baldwin Jr., Purdue's Braden Smith, Rutgers' Dylan Harper, Tennessee's Zakiya Ziegler, and West Virginia's Javon Small. Look, I know that I'm biased. I know that I wear red tinted glasses, but I'm going to be honest with you. There is not one player that I would trade at the point guard position for Chucky Hepburn right now. There is not one. All those players on the list that I just named, great players. Are any of them assuming the same responsibility as Chucky? Maybe on offense as a scorer? And this is no disrespect to Louisville, and this isn't a shot at the roster, but Terence Edwards can play the point guard position, but the Cardinals lack lead ball handlers and guys that can create for others. Is like a lot of these players are on better team, or I'm sorry, I'm not going to say a lot. A couple of these players are on better teams with more complete, rosters in terms of scoring. Chucky Hepburn has to be great for Louisville to have good chances to win games. I just look at this and I think that, okay, you can say what you want about the ACC, but Hepburn's been great all year. He's shooting over 40%, well over the past month in terms of three-point shooting. There's just not one point guard in the country that I would look at and say, you know what? I would take that guy over Chucky Hepburn right now. Call me biased. I don't care. I don't care. There's not one at the moment. And that's not to say that there aren't great players. Mark Sears, Walter Clayton, really good. Cam Jones, really good. I mean, the list goes on. The way that Hepburn is playing on both ends of the court while having to be every team's primary defensive assignment. Like when you scout Louisville, it starts with two words, Chucky Hepburn at the top of the whiteboard that you're circling saying, okay, this is the reason why Louisville is as good as they are, or one of the main reasons is because Chucky Hepburn has been elite this year. So Hepburn had a fantastic performance against Pittsburgh. He wasn't the only one that deserves his props. Terence Edwards had a really good game offensively for the Cardinals, but wasn't the greatest offensive performance for the team. Up and down, especially in that second half. We'll discuss more when we come back on this Sunday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Attention, Locked On Louisville fans. Ever wished you could directly support your favorite Louisville athletes and be a part of their journey? Now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were often handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players you love. Now with Roy, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing the Cardinals. With Roy, you get to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and the best part is that if that player transfers, you get your money back. So it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite athletes directly and help shape the future of Louisville sports. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Louisville athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Cardinal fans, want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. The Louisville Cardinals won their 7th straight game on Saturday with a 79-68 victory over the Pittsburgh Panthers. The third opportunity to complete a season sweep this season and the third successful the third successful season sweep of the season. Virginia, Florida State, and now Pittsburgh. Chucky Hepburn wasn't the only one that led the Cardinals to victory on Saturday night. Terence Edwards Jr. also had 23 points. He chipped in 7 rebounds, 8 of 13 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3, 5 of 6 from the free throw line. I thought he was really good. He made a couple of big-time shots. He had a three-pointer in the second half where Pittsburgh hit a three to go up 2, and he immediately answered with a three-pointer of his own. He had a couple of really crafty layups around the basket in the first half and down the stretch in the second half too. So it was a two-man show for the Cardinals. Rough day at the office for Javon Hadley. He was 1 of 7, had a turnover, but did have 5 rebounds. Rain Smith, 2 of 5 from the field. He had 8 points. James Scott, 2 of 4, 4 points, 6 rebounds. Louisville got 3 points off the bench. Those 3 came from a three-pointer early in the first half from Noah Waterman. Overall, the shooting numbers were really solid. 51% from the field, 52% on 11 made three-pointers. And, well, this isn't good. 71% from the free throw line, 22 of 31. In the first half, when Chucky Hepburn went off, I remember being active in a Discord, and the conversation was about, well, no one else is helping out. And I think that the rebuttal to that is pretty clearly, well, Chucky Hepburn has shot the ball on the majority of the last however many possessions. So by default, other players don't get those opportunities. But there is merit to this argument because even before Chucky went on this run, Louisville just struggled across the board. It was a two-man show. Chucky and Terrence basically were the offense for the Louisville Cardinals. They combined for 60 points in this game. 60 of the 79. Now, Louisville scored 79, which is pretty close to their season average. So just another day at the office for Pat Kelsey's offense. But it was the fact that you needed 37 from Hepburn and over 20 from Edwards to win this game by 11, despite trailing pretty significantly, or I'm sorry, not pretty significantly, pretty much, under 7 minutes in this game, they were trailing. Now, thankfully, what Louisville does well is they close out games. In the final 7 minutes, they outscored the Panthers 20-6. Now, that is one of the main reasons why the Panthers have gone from 12-4 to 16-12 before this game, because they haven't been able to defend. They really haven't been able to defend the three-point line. But on offense, they have had just a lack of clutch scoring. Guys haven't been able to step up in crunch time and get things done. Thankfully, Panthers missed some wide open shots down the stretch in the second half. More on that when we talk about the defense in the next segment. But moving forward, I think that, Rain Smith is due for a big performance. He hasn't really had a great stretch of games recently. You'll get the 3-point numbers from the past 4 games: 2 of 5, 1 of 9, 3 of 10, 4 for 11. And shooting over 30% from 3 isn't bad, but considering how good Rain Smith has been in terms of 3-point shooting this year, it's not up to his standard. James Scott, this was a really rough performance from him. He did have 4 steals and a block and had 6 rebounds, so he was able to affect the game in different ways. But he had 4 points. He missed 4 free throws. And I know that we talk about Pat Kelsey mentioning that he's a great free throw shooter in practice, but at some point that's got to translate to the games. At some point. Because right now he's just not good from the charity stripe. Like, you look at the numbers, he's shooting 42%. He's got to get better. There's just no way around that. He was 2 of 4 from the field, a couple of dunks that he probably should have made, one specifically that he should have made, a couple of other turnovers that just seemed like miscommunication on the lob. Either Scott jumped early or the pass was late. Not always his fault, but felt like James Scott had one of his worst offensive performances of the season on Saturday. And hopefully he can bounce back against California on Wednesday, but he was able to find a way to affect the game in different ways. Javon Hadley, really uncharacteristic offensive performance from him. He had 4 points, 1 of 7, 0 for 2 from the three-point line. Thankfully, the Cardinals didn't lose this game in which he wasn't able to get much going. And then you look at the bench. Long story short, the Cardinals have to get more production from their rotational pieces. Kenai Ruth shot 1 time. He had 0 points. Waterman was 1 for 4. He had 3 points. Abubakar Traore only played 3 minutes. Picked up 2 fouls, had a turnover. He really didn't play much at all. And then Frank Anselmi, 2 points, no stats provided in those minutes. So Louisville got away with it against Pittsburgh. But when you get into conference tournament play, when you get into the NCAA tournament, you're going to need more production from your supporting cast, from players not named Terence Edwards and Chucky Hepburn. They've been playing great. They've been playing elite. But you need other players to step up, and I have confidence that the supporting cast for the Cardinals are going to be able to bounce back as we go into the final week of the regular season. But I'm not really worried too much about the offense. I know that they had 12 turnovers in this game. They just weren't really themselves at the very end of the first half in terms of defense. They weren't themselves defensively in the second half. And it's been a couple game stretch where some of the same issues keep popping up. We've got to talk about them. We'll tell you what those are when we come back on this Sunday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a larger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my Houston Rockets for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. And plus, with the app being so easy to use, it's just icing on the cake. When you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. When you look at the final number, it's not going to shock you. The Louisville Cardinals only gave up 68 points to the Pittsburgh Panthers. And, I mean, can you really take a bunch away from this game defensively when you hold Pittsburgh to bad shooting numbers and they only score 68? This is where you have to just have an honest conversation about what you saw during the game. And what I saw is that Pittsburgh missed a lot of blatantly wide open shots. 10 of 37 from the three-point line for 27% on the night. Jalen Lowe, 1 of 8. Ishmael Leggett, 1 of 8. Zach Austin, 3 of 8. Guillermo Diaz-Graham, 3 of 10. 36.5% from the field. But the key numbers here, 12 offensive rebounds. Another game where the Cardinals get out-rebounded. They got out-rebounded 38-35. Louisville had 3 offensive rebounds. Pittsburgh had 12. You want to know why the Panthers were able to stay within striking distance when Chucky Hepburn scored 18 straight points? You want to know how they were able to cut the lead in the second half and even go up over the Cardinals with less than 10 minutes to go? Because they got so many second chance opportunities. Now, it feels like there's a running narrative that the Cardinals just don't get a great whistle in the KFC Yum Center, which I don't believe that they do. It was called, once again, sort of like the Florida State game, to where you're going to call things really, really tight on one end and not so much the other. I'm okay with letting teams play, but just call it consistently. But the Cardinals gave up way too many second chance opportunities. And those second chance opportunities, more often than not, turned into points for the Panthers. Panthers turned the ball over 11 times, had a negative assist to turnover ratio. They sent the Cardinals to the line 31 times. And they still had a lead with 7 minutes to go. Despite shooting as bad as they did, a lot of that comes due to second chance opportunities. The Panthers shot 18 more field goals than the Cardinals. And thankfully, the Panthers, who shoot over 35% from the three-point line on the season, thankfully, they couldn't shoot well. Thankfully, Jalen Lowe couldn't make many shots. Thankfully, Ishmael Leggett was uncharacteristically bad from the three-point line. But it goes back to the point. Almost all season, especially over this 3-game stretch where Louisville didn't look good against Florida State, they didn't look good against Virginia Tech, and they didn't look good against the Pittsburgh Panthers. Way too many open three-point shots. If you go into the NCAA tournament and you're banking on teams to not shoot the ball well from three, teams can shoot uncharacteristically out of their minds in the tournament. You have to tune that defense up. You have to get better. You have to adjust. You have to limit the second chance opportunities. No exceptions. This 3-game stretch for the Cardinals has left much to be desired from the defensive end. And it's not all bad. When you fight the whistle the way you did a couple games, when you had foul trouble against Florida State, you played against a physical team. Pittsburgh is a team that also likes to get downhill and toward the rim. But there are physical teams out there. This Pittsburgh team really wasn't playing all that well. And they didn't score 70 points. So I'm not going to make too big of a deal out of it. And credit to the Cardinals for being able to play lockdown defense at the end of the game. But I look at the whole performance and I'm thinking, okay, like Virginia Tech, like Florida State, this should have been, close to a 20-point win. It's not always easy. You get into that end of the regular season period and teams sometimes go into a lull. And I'm hoping Louisville can sort of break out of that once we get into this week's games. The last week of the regular season is here. They'll play the 2 of the 3 new members of the ACC, both at home. California on Wednesday, Stanford on Saturday on Senior Day. So I need to see the defense just get back to where it was mid-January, late January, going into this week's games. That's all I'm saying. It's not ideal. I'm not panicking because Louisville still won 7 straight games, but also feel like it's not naive to suggest that the team isn't as good as they were in January at this point, despite playing worse competition. So, again, just some observations. You've still won 7 straight games. You did what you needed to do through the month of February. You started out March on a good note. Now is the time to get back on track fully, start playing the best basketball of the season, and get ready for the ACC tournament and getting back into the big dance. So with this being an episode on Sunday that is going to take the place of the Monday episode, just a heads up, so we will return back on Tuesday talking about the final week of the regular season. We'll dive into the weekly mailbag. If you have any mailbag questions, be sure to drop them down in the YouTube comment section below, and we'll answer them when we come back on Tuesday. Everyone have a great day, great start to the week. We'll see you right back here really soon. Go Cards.